Let's talk to somebody sensible and get this show on the road. Benjamin Loughnane, of course, is from Migration Watch. Benjamin, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks very much for joining us, Benjamin. Now, first of all, can I ask, because we're trying to get Priti Patel to basically sort of streamline the asylum-seeking business and the business of asylum seeking, why does it take so long at the moment to come here, to apply for asylum and to get rejected? It seems to take years.
Well, one of the reasons is actually the backlog. There's such a sheer volume of applications that it's impossible for them to get through them all quickly enough to actually process people. There's about 150,000 active asylum claimants at the moment, which is more than double the current British Army. It's a huge amount of people, but this is presumably one of the reasons why Boris wanted an amnesty last year, because then you clear the backlog, start of a clean slate. But obviously that's a terrifically irresponsible policy to simply say, yes, let every single person who is claiming asylum have it and then start fresh. And, even if you did do that, it would it wouldn't solve the issue, because then you incentivize people coming, because you say, if you come here, all you have to do is you sit pretty, and then eventually you'll be given an amnesty.
Yeah,
so,
exactly right.
No matter who you are.
And that seems to be part of the problem. She's trying to now, Priti Patel, streamline that process. Because, I mean, I've been telling the story of one particular individual who came to apparently Scotland when he was aged 12 from Afghanistan. He had applied for an application to remain as an asylum seeker, but he was 24, but before they actually rejected it.
Yeah, it's a total scandal. And then, even if you are rejected, less than half the people who are rejected actually leave the country, whether of their own accord or by being removed. So it doesn't really matter if you don't get given amnesty, or rather given asylum, because you don't get removed, and then you can just submit another application on different grounds. So you can turn around, after years and years of being in this country waiting for your application to be processed. And then when you're rejected, you can say, oh, actually, now I'm claiming asylum for this other reason that I've just thought up.
Right.
And then you get a few more years in the country.
And presumably this is all as a result of the asylum kind of laws which were brought in as a result of our membership of the European Union. Because looking at these Home Office figures that I've got here, in which they say the number of people granted protection, resettlement or an alternative form of leave. And what that tells me is that they've got all sorts of different ways of applying. As you say, they've got asylum, humanitarian protection, discretionary leave, UASC leave, and other resettlement grants. So it seems like there's at least 5 different ways of possibly remaining here.
Yeah, well, it's a system which is designed to be so complex and so difficult to navigate that a number of very skillful lawyers can run rings around, the Home Office, and people who are genuinely trying to do their job. A lot of good people in the government are trying to do their job, trying to remove people who have no rights to be here. But the way that the law is structured at the moment is far too complex, leaves far too many loopholes, and is so open to abuse that it is being abused.
Yes.
We can't be surprised if the law is open to abuse and then people abuse it.
Well, exactly right. And I was surprised yesterday when I got the first batch of information from the Home Office, in which it was revealed that the top 4 countries in asylum applications are Iran, Albania, Iraq and Pakistan. Now, while you might say Iran and Iraq are not particularly pleasant places to live, Pakistan is certainly not at war, neither is Albania. And it seems to me that this nonsense that gets spouted by the lefties of this world and the Gary Linekers of this world about, we must be very sorry for these desperate people fleeing war zones. They're not fleeing war zones. I mean, forget about the fact they're coming from France. Even their original countries are not at war.
Well, absolutely, and we need to make a distinction between genuine refugees and these people who are posing as refugees in order to take advantage of our great generosity as a nation. We've got a great history of giving asylum to people who are genuine refugees who really do genuinely need it. But our kindness should not be mistaken for weakness. We should not be in a position where people are coming here and going, they're a soft touch, we can go in, we can, milk their system and be put up in 4-star hotels and looked after and catered to, and spend years there going through their system. And then when we're rejected, we won't leave anyway. We'll just put in another application. We'll stay, then we'll abuse the system. Yeah. That is not the same thing as genuine refugees. I mean, for example, the Afghan translators who during the war helped our soldiers to navigate a very treacherous and difficult terrain, who now are at genuine threat of being killed because they are seen in their country as traitors. These are the sorts of people who will spend years in limbo in purgatory of the system because of the sheer volume of false claimants that there are, making the system impossible to get through for genuine refugees. And the number of genuine refugees are a lot lower than the number of people claiming asylum in this country at the moment.
Absolutely right. Because interestingly, again, I'm going to refer to these figures that I've got. The East Midlands, for example, UK region, up to the year ending March 2020, by far and away the biggest number of people sent to that region were from Iraq, next up from Iran, then Albania, then Pakistan, then China. And then they've got a category called Other. I'm not quite sure what that would be, because they do categorise most countries as countries. So I presume Other would be, I don't know what they would be, stateless people?
I'd actually presume it's people who they don't know where they're from, they don't have any documents, and they are not compliant, they're not saying where they're from. There's, plenty of people, I'm sure you saw the video of people throwing their identification into the water as they're coming over. I mean, there is a real problem at the moment of people who are evasive, they aren't compliant, they don't want to help their own asylum claims, because they are here largely to drag it out as long as possible and to continue to be able to claim asylum in this country.
Surely if you refuse to cooperate with the authorities and refuse to say where you're from, then how do the authorities know that you're fleeing a war zone?
Well, exactly. I mean, this is one of the problems. We should have a lot more of an onus on the people who are claiming asylum to prove where they're from and to prove the situation they're coming from. Because when it comes down to it, fundamentally, we can't just allow anyone into this country if they come over and say, oh, I claim asylum, and it's on you to prove that I'm an asylum seeker. Yes. That's entirely the wrong way around. But the government, fundamentally, when it comes down to it, is far too weak to do anything about this. They know full well what's going on. They know full well, the runaround, the sort of, the corruption and the manipulation of the system. They know what's going on, but they're too weak to do anything about it. And the Conservative Party is no longer the party of law and order. They can no longer claim to be the party of law and order while such rampant abuse of the system is going on under their government. They've been in power, including the coalition, for 10 years now. They've had a majority for 5 years, and they've had an 80-seat majority for, what about 9 months now. They've got absolutely no excuse. And, Boris likes to think of himself as a big sort of Churchillian figure. But, Churchill said he prefers George Orr to war. Well, it seems Boris prefers George Orr to law. He's much rather talk and do the PR campaigns and go out there and give these great rousing speeches about how he's doing everything that the people want, but he's not actually doing any of it. He's just talking. He's there for the photo shoots and the big speeches, but he's not there when it comes down to it. He's not there when it's a legal issue, when we need to get rid of laws which promote abuse, when we need to withdraw from international agreements which put a ridiculous amount of expectation on us to take in migrants as soon as they enter into the English Channel. Where is he when it comes down to actually doing the things that need to be done?
Well, that's a very good question, because one of the things that we put to the Home Office, and we asked the Home Office as far as, the asylum seekers who arrive, and we see more arriving today, why are they not being tested for COVID-19? To which they said, that's a decision for the NHS. Well, I'm sorry, if you're coming in through a border which is actually policed by the border force, then surely if you're unknown, and surely if you are an immigrant who is coming illegally, the first thing they should do is test you for COVID-19.
Well, back in April, The Guardian reported that, there was this huge problem in the Calais camp with coronavirus. And they said that they expected half the camp to be infected within a month. Now, that was back in April. We're now into August. So if half of the people were expected to be infected by the middle of May, then I wonder how many of the people who are coming over now will be infected, if we are to trust the Guardian on that claim. Now, I might be called cynical for saying that the Guardian probably, exaggerated considerably the threat in order to promote sympathy, to, sort of push the agenda. But even if, take them at their word, if that's the case, we should at least be testing people. I mean, not just not letting them in, but at least just testing people who are coming in from what is supposedly a hotbed of the most deadly pandemic that we've seen, supposedly, in years.
Well, that's exactly right. And as far as Priti Patel's attempts to sort of move this on and to at least look as if something is being done, the French are saying that to Chris Philp that basically they will work harder to stop so many boats getting put in the water in the first place. But also, if she can speed up this asylum process, that doesn't necessarily change anything, because at the moment, if you get turned down for asylum, you get to repeal and you get to hang around for a few more years, don't you?
Yeah, it's not about speeding anything up. It's about changing the law.
Yeah.
Currently, the law is not fit for purpose. We need a total overhaul, not only of our immigration system at large, but certainly of our asylum system, which is so open to abuse and manipulation. But the problem is, when it really comes down to it, the government don't actually need to do anything, because the people who care about this issue, the voters who care about this issue, who else are they going to be able to vote for? What protests do they have against this? When it comes down to it, they either vote for the Conservatives who say they'll do something, or they vote for Labour who don't even say they'll do anything, or they vote for the Lib Dems who say they're going to do even worse, and they are very proud of saying how much worse they're going to do a job of this. So really, there is no opposition in this country whatsoever. I mean, we've got, of course, Nigel Farage has been very vocal about this. He's been very hot on this issue. He's done a very good job. But fundamentally, when it comes down to it, the leader of the opposition is Keir Starmer. And where is he to be seen? He's not opposing anything.
No. I mean, Keir Starmer yesterday was banging on about A-levels and talking outside of Parliament as if, this was suddenly something that he had found to be a great topic of national interest, which I'm afraid it isn't. The A-levels are only really of interest to people doing their A-levels. And the A-level business is only of interest to schools and teachers and all the rest of it. And it doesn't really matter a jot to most people in this country. But most people in this country would like to see this being clamped down upon and the illegal migrant business actually being stopped, because so many people are making so much money out of it. We've got the ridiculous sort of situation where I think the shadow Home Secretary for the Labour Party was basically saying that the government should show more compassion. Well, as we've pointed out all week, there's no point in showing compassion to organised crime and organised criminals who are making millions every single time anybody gets in a dinghy.
Yeah, well, there's people making millions sometimes in the course of one day. I mean, probably about 20, 30 million has gone through the channel this summer. And I think I said the other day to Julia when I was on her show that a lot of this is not going to be pure profit. Where is that money going? Why aren't we investigating how that money moves around? Why aren't we investigating where the wheels are being greased in order to keep this influx flowing? Because when it comes down to it, there are a lot of people who are employed on both their coast and on ours to stop these sorts of things happening. Why is that system not operating properly? Is it something to do with the way that the money's flowing throughout these, throughout this system? If not, then it's something where the government needs to say, okay, clearly our system's not fit for purpose, and clearly your government, the French system is not fit for purpose either. But it might actually be a lot to do with corruption. And there's a lot of money. This is big money business. So, where there's money, follow it. There's often a lot of corruption in things which are profitable. But, when it comes down to it, really, fundamentally, we have no alternative. We have to put pressure on the government, because who else are we going to vote in to deal with this? We'll only get worse later on down the line. But Boris Johnson is not stepping up. Priti Patel, she's saying the right things, but she's not delivering on them. That might be because she doesn't have enough support in the cabinet or from the government, or it might be because she's not competent. When it comes down to it, I really hope she is competent. I really hope she is committed to solving this issue, because we need good people in government to prevent these things from happening. But at the moment, they're continuing. They keep going on. So we can only come to the conclusion that they're either not competent or they're not willing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Benjamin, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Benjamin Loughnane from Migration Watch UK. This government needs to get to grips with this. We've been talking about it now for a long time. We're hearing the right noises, but what we need to see are the right actions. What we don't need to see is the shadow Home Secretary, a bloke by the name of Nick Thomas Simmons, who I've never heard of until today, who's apparently accusing Priti Patel of a shameful bid to militarise a humanitarian crisis. And he's accused her of being devoid of compassion. There's that lefty virtue signalling sound coming out of the squeaky part of the Labour Party benches. She's not lacking in compassion. She's the Home Secretary. You don't have to have compassion to be the Home Secretary. You just have to have the will and the means to make laws and to make sure those laws are carried out. And right now, there are lots of people breaking the laws of this country because they are coming here illegally. But unfortunately, we give them an excuse to stay here illegally because of the law. There's something very wrong and it needs to be sorted out right now. Apparently, basically, anybody who comes here can stay here for as long as they like, particularly if they are unable to leave the UK because it might be for reasons outside of their control. Well, can you imagine? It's like somebody saying to you, look, the pub's shut, can you leave please? No, I'm sorry, I'm not able to leave due to something which is beyond my control. Now, in any pub situation, you get thrown out on your backside. In Britain, you get to stay in the pub. That's the problem.